What a long, strange trip it's been. What a long, strange trip it's been. I've been working on this channel for about 16 months now. I had no idea what I was doing when I started in May of 2024. I didn't know if I would be any good. I didn't know if anyone would watch. It's been a lot of work, a lot of learning, and it's been so rewarding. I've recently passed the 1,000 subscriber mark. Thank you all.
Thank you!
Greetings, people of YouTube. Welcome back to Pick the Bass.
Welcome!
I wanted to do something to celebrate hitting 1,000 subscribers. When I watch other people's channels, it eventually feels like we're becoming friends. I love when they share some of their backstory. It helps me connect and it keeps me coming back for more. As I put out more and more content, I'd imagine some of you are starting to feel like you're getting to know me.
Hello.
I thought it might be fun to give you a bit of my history and sort out what got us here. If you've ever found yourself wondering how I got into music, what instruments I play, and what bands I've been in, this is the video for you. Come along with me as I go over some of my greatest hits. Let's do this! My family were all very musical. Back in the day, all of our family parties used to turn into a giant jam session. That might sound cool, but on the day, it annoyed the shit out of me. I wanted to get home to my toys and video games, and listening to my family jam was totally in the way. I'd had my dinner and dessert, and it was time to bounce. At some point when I was 8 or so, my mom tried to teach me how to play the piano. I had no interest in learning, and it went nowhere. It looked like I'd be the first of us to not be musical, and I was totally fine with that.
Fine by me!
It wasn't until the 8th grade that I finally opened up to the experience. We were learning the guitar in music class. My friends all took to it and were doing great, but I, on the other hand, totally sucked. It was frustrating not being able to join in on the fun. I was complaining to my mom about it. She plays piano, guitar, clarinet. She said it was because my hands are too big and I should try playing the bass. That summer, I got my first bass for my 14th birthday, and here's where my journey begins. It took me all of 5 minutes of playing my new bass before I started writing a song. I've never been much of a jam guy. I don't really learn other people's tunes. I've always connected to music more through writing. I took a few lessons early on, but it wasn't for me. I noodled around by myself for a few months, and then a few friends and I got together and decided it was time to start a band. It took a few lineup changes to figure out who we wanted to be, and we eventually settled on a ska punk band. We called ourselves Bob's Your Uncle. I have absolutely no idea why. It was a terrible name, and we were a terrible band, so I guess it worked. Bob's Your Uncle was my main band throughout most of high school, although I did have a few side quests. We wrote a ton of songs, played a lot of shows, and a good time was had by all. At the time of our first show, we were all well-known scene kids. At least 100 people came out to see us, and it scared the shit out of me. While we were setting up, I looked out at the crowd and got scared. I refused to play and quit the band. That lasted for about 5 minutes, and then the band and crowd pulled me back in. It was like the scene from the end of Rudy. Rudy, 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 Rudy. I've played a lot of shows since that day, and I don't ever remember being nervous again. I'm super comfortable on stage. I have zero fear of an audience. I love to entertain. Bob's Your Uncle never managed to get into the studio. Cheap and easy recording didn't really exist in the 90s, and we never got to lay down any of our tunes. I do have a handful of tracks that were recorded directly into a jambox in the center of the room. They're not pretty, but they're the best I've got. If you were around back in the day, you probably remember our song Taco, but if we had a hit, it was First One Out. Check it out. The most notable side quest I had in high school was when I joined Example 24. They were the coolest band in our scene, and I was so lucky to be friends with them. I was driving around with the bassist and drummer. It was a Tuesday. They told me their guitarist had left and they wanted me to replace him. This guy. This sounded awesome, but there was one huge problem. I didn't know how to play the guitar and they had a show that weekend. Yikes. I borrowed a guitar and an amp from a friend and somehow managed to learn how to play the guitar and their entire set in a matter of days. I was only in the band for a few months, but in that matter of time, I had a lot of firsts. Bigwig invited us to open for them in Pennsylvania. It was my first out-of-state show and my first time hanging with Bigwig. We played a festival. We appeared on television. We did not, however, get into the studio, so there's still no recordings, although there is footage from our television appearance. Check out a bit of that. When I was a senior, Bob's Your Uncle went through a lot of changes. Some of us were going to college and had to be replaced. Those of us left behind didn't want to play ska anymore. With a new lineup and a new direction, it felt like it was time for a name change. Name change! This is where my next chapter begins, with the birth of Payday. We were a bit older and finally starting to get better as musicians and songwriters. I switched from bass to guitar, which grosses me out so hard now. Payday played a lot of shows and shared the stage with a lot of cool bands. We didn't tour, but we did venture out as far as Pittsburgh, which was a really big deal at the time. The coolest thing about Payday is that we finally got into the studio! We recorded our first EP at a studio in New Milford called Boulevard. It was so much fun, but man did we suck. Check out a bit of our song, 2 More Days.
I don't know why you try so slow. Why in front of me? Why don't you just go away?
We spent the next few months learning from our mistakes. We learned about intonation. We learned how to tune. We tried to write better songs and get better at playing them. Once we thought we were ready, we went back to Boulevard and recorded our full length, Boys Night Out.
All right, boys, night out!
We worked with producer Jay Cantor. He was super easy to work with and really helped push us along. I can't imagine how much it sucked babysitting a bunch of kids in the studio. We weren't even amateurs. It was a really cool experience, but I wasn't happy with the album at all. My guitar sounded awful. Some of the other bits were pretty bad too. The mix was terrible. I decided to re-record my guitar and have the album remixed. We took the album to Orange Whip Studios in Santa Barbara, California, and worked with Angus Cook to get everything in better shape. We recorded some more there, experimented with samples, and even got Angus to sing some harmonies. It was so exciting to be in California at a studio where so many of my heroes had recorded. California. Carter from the Mad Caddies was living on a couch in the lounge. Lagwagon was recording Leftovers, and their gear was all over the place. The Ataris had just finished an album, and traces of them were everywhere. And then there's the best part. Angus was working on the first Bad Astronaut album, and he played me a rough mix. I got to hear it first. That's still one of my favorite albums of all time, and it sounds incredible. I also got to hang out with Christopher Cross. I did get pooped on by a seagull on the Santa Monica Pier, so I guess it wasn't all good times. This mix was so much better. We had it mastered at a studio on Long Island. I don't remember the name, but at the time, I was going to the School of Audio Engineering in Manhattan. One of the other students worked there, and he did a great job. Check out a bit of the song Not My Friend.
about the things you said, what you wanna do. I'm not a fool, get turned around by you. Were my friend, but now you want thing of the past. Thought that this would last, but it looks like I'm an ass.
It was about this time that emo started to show up. We had a new bassist and he started pushing us in a new direction. We were writing new tunes and it was pretty clear that they didn't fit in with the Payday songs. We decided to become a new band and changed our name to Skyline Drive. We recorded our first and only album at Nada Studios. It was my first time there and my first time meeting John. To this day, John is still my favorite person to work with. Everyone should record everything with John at Nada. I still love the Skyline Drive tunes, but as humans we were chaos. We managed to hold it together long enough to play 6 shows, but then we broke up. Check out a bit of our song So Far Away.
Everyone had changed. Inside I feel the same. Walls that can't break down. Trapped inside my cage. Do you feel feel it where you wanna go, but you don't know what to do. What you wanna do.
Bob's Your Uncle was my first band. That turned into Payday, and Payday turned into Skyline Drive. For the first time, I was without any of my people. I didn't want to go to college, and I certainly didn't want to work in an office. I wanted to be in a band, and I wanted to make something of it. So I went out and I looked for people who felt the same way.
Here's how I like them, and I suggest you have them the same way.
Luckily for me, I didn't have to look far. Enter Pencey Prep. Pencey Prep was a band that Payday had played a lot of shows with. They were on Eyeball Records and are most famous now for being the band that Frank was in before he was in My Chemical Romance. Their lead guitarist Neil had left after they finished their debut LP, and I was brought in to replace him. I'm a lead guitarist now. I was only in Pencey Prep for a few months, but it was my first real taste of the music industry. I got to hang out with label people. I got to play with way bigger bands. My favorite Pencey Prep moment is when we opened for Piebald. Piebald rules. I loved the dudes in the band, but I knew it wasn't for me. I have no idea what I was looking for at the time, but I knew it wasn't Pencey Prep. I think it was probably for the best, because in a roundabout way it led to Frank being in my chem. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Before I left, we were working on a bunch of new songs. While I didn't make it to the studio, they did. Check out a bit of the song Attention Reader. When I left Pencey Prep, I thought I would continue playing the guitar. Boy, was I wrong. I bought a drum set while in Pencey Prep. I didn't know how to play, but had always wanted to learn. I was out catching up with a friend. I told him that I had left Pencey Prep and was looking for a new band. I also told him that I had bought a kit and was starting to learn. He told me his friends in Hidden in Plainview were looking for a drummer and he wanted me to try out. I thought he was crazy. I couldn't play and I had no desire to play drums in a band. I didn't really have a lot going on at the time though, so I figured fuck it and had him set it up.
Fucking cut him out!
I showed up to rehearsal with my new drums, figuring I'd play a few songs, make an ass out of myself, and meet some new people. It's always good to network, and I didn't know anyone from that part of Jersey. We jammed for a bit, and then we sort of just hung out. They were cool dudes, and it was a good time, but I didn't expect to hear back from any of them ever again. After all, I couldn't play. Turns out they didn't see it that way. They saw my drive and potential, and they wanted to get back to playing shows as soon as possible. They wanted me to join, and I said yes. Now I'm a drummer. That's nuts. We ditched all of their songs and immediately started writing new tunes. This was great for me because it was way easier to write my own parts than it was to learn someone else's. I figured I would stay with them for a few weeks or months until I found a new band to play guitar in. Those few weeks turned into a few years. We started playing every show we could get. We were all over the Northeast. We signed with a small label from Chicago and headed to Big Blue to work with Jay Cantor on our debut. I had stayed in touch with Jay after meeting him at Boulevard, and when I was done with school, he invited me to come work at Big Blue. So at the time when we were recording, I was still working there as well. I also spent some time at Bad Boy Studios in Manhattan, but that's a story for another time. We put out our EP, Operation Cutthroat, and headed out on a 2-month tour of the US. We must have made quite the impact in those few months because it wasn't long after we got home that we signed with Drive-Thru. Now we're on the Dream label. Everything is going our way. I couldn't be less happy. I kept looking for a way to get out and get back to playing the guitar. We did some cool tours. Fall Out Boy and the Starting Line really stand out. We began writing a full length, but Drive-Thru immediately wanted an EP. We headed to Portrait Studios to work with Chris Badami on our debut. After that, we were right back on tour. We played my favorite show ever when we opened for MXPX at the Norva in Virginia. I was getting burnt out. I still wanted to play the guitar, and I wanted to play a different style of music. I also really wanted to record our full length while everyone else wanted to remain on tour. I had hit my breaking point and I really needed to find a way out. We had 2 weeks at home in between tours, and I figured this was my best chance to get out of the band without totally screwing everyone. I left after our last show in Delaware. Everyone was pissed, but it was for the best. They ended up with Spencer, and he's at least 10 times the drummer that I ever was. I'm not a huge fan of our Drive-Thru EP, but Operation Cutthroat is a good time. Check out a bit of our song, Eyes Like a Target. It's the end of 2003. I've been playing music for 10 years. I've gotten everything I've ever wanted and hated it. I'm a total loser.
I'm a loser.
For some reason, I thought leaving my popular band on a huge label was a good idea. It was time to move on to bigger and better things. I jumped into a band with my friend Jason from Payday and Skyline Drive. We teamed up with 2 friends, a guitarist and a drummer. We had 2 guitar players and a drummer, so I figured it was time for me to get back to the bass. The bass is the coolest. We wrote and recorded a demo with producer Jesse Cannon, but the band dynamics were off, so Jason and I immediately left and started the band that would become John Connor. I'll probably do an entire video on John Connor, so I'll keep this short. We wrote a lot of songs, recorded a demo with Jesse, and started playing a lot of shows. People seemed to like us, so we bought a van and took our show on the road. After a few tours, we had built a pretty decent national following. We signed with Negative Progression, and I got to writing our debut, Dance Dance Revolution. For some reason, I took our music in a wildly different direction, and we sort of became an electronic dance pop band. It took me 3 months to finish the album, and when I was done, I was totally burnt out. We played a few local shows to build up hype for the release. It was rocky, and I wasn't feeling it. On the day the album came out in stores, and the day before we were to leave for tour, I quit the band. Since I basically was the band, this was the end of John Connor. At the time, I was really down on the band and music in general. I didn't think I would ever play again. Over the years, John Connor has grown on me a lot. If we had a big song, it was Dancing May Occur. Check it out.
Staring at a sea of electric lights, waiting for day to turn to night. Heavy-minded days end with teeth clenched. You're wearing thin. Weeks over, life's begun. Fade away into your dream.
After ending John Connor, I decided to move to California and start scoring movies. I had enough connections to get my feet in a lot of doors. Plenty of people wanted me, but they wanted me for free. I had already built myself up in bands and studios, and I didn't want to do it again. I definitely had a bit of an ego, but I also needed to make money. I started going to school for IT, and I've been doing IT pretty much ever since. I did play bass in a couple of cover bands while I was there to make some extra cash. It was a good time, and it reminded me that music is supposed to be fun. After a few years, I moved back to Jersey and decided it was time to play again. I started a band called Jaguar Shark with a bunch of dudes who were also in Hidden in Plainview. Somehow, I ended up back on drums. We wrote a bunch of songs and recorded a demo at Nada. It was so awesome to be working with John again. I seriously can't recommend Nada enough. That EP is still one of my favorite things I've ever recorded. Check out a bit of our song In the Year 2000.
Can we make it through this? Well, let's swallow it. Every storm is different, so let's just wait and see. Let's think so plain to me. Seems okay to me. Let's just tough it out and see.
It seems like every band is full of drama, and Jaguar Shark was no exception. One of the guitarists quit, and the bassist and I decided to join him. We weren't done yet though. We started a new band with a couple of friends. It was basically the same vibes, but with a different singer. We called ourselves Gettysburg, and we were awesome. This is probably the best band I was in up until that point. We wrote some songs and we went to Nada. As always, it was great to work with John. While we were inside, I left my sunroof open and came out to a car full of water. I don't recommend ever doing this. Gettysburg really seemed like it was going to be a thing. This was the band that we had all been waiting for. We played a few shows, things were going great, and then our old friend Drama entered the chat. We broke up, and that was it for me for a few years. I was once again burnt out on music and other people. The tunes were great though. Check out a bit of the song Shake That Bear.
Shake that bear, shake that bear, shake that bear. I wanna shake that bear, shake that bear, shake that bear, shake that bear. I wanna shake that bear.
After a few years, I wanted to play again. It's hard for me to walk away from music for too long. I started recording by myself. No releases, no shows. I just wanted to get my creativity out. I called it the Army of Sharkness. It was mostly 60s inspired, stuff that sounded like the Beatles and the Beach Boys. Then somehow I took a wild turn and recorded a few chillwave and hip-hop songs with a friend. I decided it was time to get back to making music with other people. I recruited some friends, got back to the 60s style, and began writing the first Ingenious Devices album. And oh yeah, we changed the name again. We're now called Ingenious Devices. After that, I put out a few random tracks and a couple EPs. I have a second LP that's nearly done. I just have to find the motivation to finish it. I kind of see this as the band that I'll be in for the rest of my life. I'll keep coming back. Check out a bit of our song Live Together, Die Alone.
I'm so sorry that we can't get along. I keep trying, you always think I'm wrong. If we keep fighting, nothing will get done. Live together,
couple of years ago, the singer of Gettysburg and I decided we wanted to start a punk rock cover band, sort of like Me First. We brought in people from Payday, John Connor, Madison, and Rest Assured. We were basically a Bergen County pop-punk supergroup. We recorded an LP of covers. I produced and mixed it, John over at Nada mastered it, and Mark DeSalvo did the artwork. Mark DeSalvo. The dude that does artwork for NoFX and Lagwagon did artwork for my band. That is still pretty much the coolest thing that I've got. After we finished our album, we decided to shift gears and start writing our own songs. I wrote us an album of mid-90s West Coast punk bangers. They are my favorite songs I've ever done, and I can't wait to get them recorded. We're a bunch of busy and lazy 40-something-year-old dudes that can't get our shit together long enough to get into the studio. But at some point, we'll head over to Nada and record what I hope will be the best album I've ever been a part of. Stay tuned. Until that's out, I leave you with this, our cover of the Golden Girls theme tune, Thank You for Being a Friend.
Thank you for being a friend. Travel down the road and back again. Your heart is true. You're a pal and you're confident. And if you threw a party, invited everyone you knew, you would see the biggest gift would be from me, and the card attached would say, thank you for being a friend. And if you threw a party, invited everyone you knew, you would see the biggest gift would be from me, and the card attached would say, thank you for being a friend.
Ride the Snake was filmed in front of a live studio audience.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Well, now you know a lot more about me. Why did I spend so much time playing the guitar? Was any of my story interesting? Would you like me to go deeper into any specific parts? Let me know down in the comments. Finally, please make sure you like, subscribe, ring the bell, all the YouTube stuff. I know it's annoying to hear that all the time, but it really helps. I'm having a great time making these videos, and the more that I know that you're enjoying them, the more that it motivates me to continue. I'll catch you next time, but until then, be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes! See ya.
Thank